what's your advice for someone before they come to camp, whether it's questions they could prepare or things to think about before they're face-to-face with that college coach?
I think a lot of times the kids that really impressed me have actually emailed me prior to camp, looking forward to meeting me, and that sticks in the coach's minds. We're teaching them how to be a recruited. There's college coaches there to watch them as well. We're educating the parents on the recruiting process, but we're hopeful that the camp can provide them things that over time they can take their combine measurements to another level if they're willing to put the work in. So we try to take the fear of like what that combine experience is going to be like, because it really doesn't matter. Like,
Welcome to X Factor. I am your host, Shannon Sitch. Most athletes and parents show up to their first camp nervous, feeling overwhelmed by the unknown. Today, we're going to go behind the scenes of an exact camp to show you exactly what to expect from first check-in to your final car ride home. I'd like to take a moment to welcome our guest, Coach Shannon Currier, to this talk. Coach, how are we doing?
we're doing great. Thank you. Excited to talk to another Shannon, and really have enjoyed my time leading camp. So looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. And as I mentioned, we're going to take a deeper dive into the camp schedule about how we support the athletes at our events. And specifically, we're going to talk about why we structure the camp the way that we do. One, our goal is to reduce uncertainty. A kid can't perform on the field if they're anxious about not knowing the daily schedule or when they're going to get to meet those coaches. And two, studies show feedback is most effective when given immediately. This is why at camp you'll see coaches pull players aside to give a performance analysis right away. So, without further ado, Coach, let's dive into those things and talk about how we accomplish them. So we'll start with number one. Shannon, obviously you're a lead for our X1 camp. So talk us through when you're running the check-in table. The parents walk up at 8 a.m. to check in. What's the look on their faces? What are they worried about?
I think there is a lot of uncertainty when parents show up. We have the nice flags that kind of like mark our territory, the exact camp flag. So people kind of know where to go. We're, as kids get there early, we're kind of letting them know where to gather. We usually gather on the bleachers, and then at the appropriate time at 8 o'clock, usually we're going to get everybody together. I bring them all up. And before we do registration, I like to just walk them through the itinerary, give them a little information about what the camp will entail, why this camp is going to be good for them. And then I'll introduce, it gives time actually for kids that are late to get there. And then I bring the coaching staff up, and fortunately we have coaches from different colleges, and we have the coaches introduce themselves and where they're from. And then I send the group of kids, they're all assigned to a coach. So then they get right away a connection with a smaller portion of the camp, because they have a coach that's going to oversee them. That coach does a good job then of teaching them the elevator pitch and really getting to know them, having conversations. So I think initially at this camp, all kids feel connected immediately. And then when we do get to the football and the warm-ups, the dynamic stretching, they've already had conversation. They've already had to, demonstrate their elevator pitch. So I think all the things that the way this camp is ran, it really leads to kids feeling connected and wanted and valued, right from the get-go. And while the coaches are doing that, I'm now talking to parents about, other elements, questions they might have, letting them know about the recruiting pitch that's going to take place later on in the camp. And I try to partner up with the parents to help them, do their best to help their sons be the best that they can be. And I just think it's a really good environment that we create by the scheduling of the camp.
So I loved how you touched on this. I asked kind of about how we address the parent, and you started to touch on how we address that kid who shows up to camp, a little uncertain what's going to happen to the day. You touched on the elevator pitch. Can you expand a little bit more about just how powerful that is, what that session looks like, and how that empowers the individual to start their day at camp?
The camp is more than just football, and I think it's another separator from other camps. We're teaching kids how to communicate to college coaches. We're teaching them how to be recruited. There's college coaches there to watch them as well. We're educating the parents on the recruiting process, and a lot of times that costs a lot of money for parents that we're involving in this camp. But the elevator pitch is really communication, and all college coaches want to recruit kids that know how to communicate, that have some energy, that can look somebody in the eye. So the elevator pitch is like we explain if you're on the 13th floor and you're going on the first floor and you're in the elevator with Nick Saban, like, how are you gonna what are you gonna say about yourself? Like, what are the most important things that you want to get across to somebody? We talk about that firm handshake, looking person in the eye, and just teaching kids how to communicate. Because in this day and age, there's a lot of Snapchatting and texting, and kids got to be trained how to communicate and speak. And my wife's in human resources, and I think one thing she told me a couple years ago that really kind of hit a chord was, in the past, the GPA was so powerful in determining who gets hired, but now people are looking for folks that can communicate their energy. Everybody wants to have somebody with good energy, good body language. Body language is 80% of communication. So in that elevator pitch process, those are all things that we're hitting on, and they practice with their coaches. They practice with one another. It's a really good start to camp, and all campers are going to get a book that includes that elevator pitch process of blanks that they fill in. And that's just one of many mental performance training skills that we're teaching at the camp. But I think that's a great way to start the camp and build rapport and communication, and force kids to talk and, have fun with it. You get to learn from other people. So I think it's a great way to start the camp.
Now, you and I have both led quite a few events at this point, and I think you'll agree that there's a bit of a transformation that happens at camp from the first elevator pitch we see to when the guys say thank you and goodbye at the end of the day. Can you kind of talk about that magic a little bit and just how the elevator pitch brings these kids out of their shell?
Absolutely. Just them forcing them to have interactions with one another. I mean, it's when you can get kids to communicate with each other and share experiences, I guess that just helps bring people together. So they're not just like at other camps, you're going to go on the field, you're not talking to anybody, you're going to get right to football. Here, there's a little bit of team building, if you will, where there's some conversation. Coaches are building relationship. They're talking about how they're going to help them. Relationships are being established from the get-go, and that's what makes it different. And then as you get to know somebody's name, you're in camp and you're maybe reinforcing something or encouraging somebody, but because you know their name, it's just a different feel for that student athlete that's there. And we're trying to show the kids that we're here to help them grow and give them things that they could take with them so they can have a better quote unquote process in their days. They can include some of these behaviors and techniques and tools that we're providing at the camp. But we also are making sure to remind them that wherever they're at when they start camp really doesn't matter. That day is a chance for them to see kind of where they're at in their sport at the camp. But we're hopeful that the camp can provide them things that over time they can take their combine measurements to another level if they're willing to put the work in. So we try to take the fear of like what that combine experience is going to be like, because it really doesn't matter. Like, you're going to do what you did today based on what you've been doing. Well, those days are over. You can't now change what you've been doing. But what you can do now is this could be a start of the next portion of your life and your development. And today is the first day for the rest of our life, some people would say. So, but the communication just makes it for the relationships to be established. And when kids hear other kids speaking, they're building relationships with one another as well. So there's a little bit of a team being built. All the kids from different areas and high schools come together, and we're essentially assembling a team at that camp, a team camp, if you will. And when we break and go to the next space, there's somebody's breaking us down, and we'll stop in between some segments and have coaches explain things that are standing out to them. So there's just a lot of interaction, a lot of personal interaction, a lot of feedback that's taking place. I think those things make exact camps different.
Great segue, Coach. I kept hearing you allude to how we're different and how we stand out from other events. Can you talk more about, sometimes at events we may hear parents complain about other camps, maybe coaches just sitting in the tent on their phones. So can you talk about how our itinerary, our camp schedule is built different than other events?
Like, again, I think there's opportunities for more discussion throughout the day. The fact that we're doing the elevator pitch is one example, but then, every camp prior to dynamic stretching, but prior of that, there's relationships already been established. From there, we do combining, and we're to actually take a step back. Before we do the dynamic stretching, we're actually putting them in their groups, and we're cycling through the 3 stations so we can teach them how to run a 40. We're going to teach a stance. We're not just going to have them go out there and run a 40. We're going to really break it down, because honestly, 80% of the kids don't have a very good stance when they're running the 40. So we're going to spend time. What does a good stance look like? Why do you do it this way? while that's happening, there's a group that's learning how to do a pro agility with the right stance and how they start the movement to the long jump. Like, a lot of kids haven't done those things. So we're educating them on how they can have their best scores. Then we'll come together, warm up, and then from after the dynamic stretching, we're providing a lot of speed enhancement drills. We're giving them coaching techniques on speed fundamentals, really, and also like just the mobility. A lot of kids don't work on mobility; they work on strength. Maybe they don't move as well. Hip mobility is really essential in football, so we're working on some mobility elements, and then from there we get to the spaces. Now we're going to do the testing, but anyway, there's being relations being built throughout the time. The other thing that's different is, our coaches, it's essential, and the coaches have to find ways to, give feedback throughout the day. There are times where we'll stop and that coach is going to talk to their group, but we're encouraging the coaches to, every drill they're providing feedback, and we encourage the kids to be listening, because when one guy's getting feedback, he's really talking to all the players at that position. So there's a lot of different feedback throughout the day. There's also college coaches from different places coming there, and they're all curious to see if there's any kids that are going to be recruitable too. So it's a recruiting opportunity for these coaches as well. And that's why a lot of coaches like working the camps, because they get to see a lot of kids. And I know a lot of parents bring them in hopes of, hey, I want to get my son recruited as well. And then I think the thing that really ties it in together and maybe makes it real special is, after lunch, we have that hour time of recruitment where the college coaches will share what they're looking for in recruiting, how to get recruited, how to use Twitter, how to get their huddle video highlight together. So there's an hour of time where we're committing to that recruiting element. A lot of these kids just don't have that experience or knowledge. So that's really valuable. And then they get to hear about, hey, why academics is huge. It really gives them a better perspective on, if I want to get scholarship money for college, doing well in school is going to really allow me to get the most money. So we spend a lot of time, each coach really talks about that, because, your GPA has a big impact on what kind of scholarship money you'll get academically at any school. And then during that time, as the lead, I take the parents and go through levels of football, the recruiting calendar. They all have their individual questions, but that's a great time for me to build rapport with the parents and build trust with them, and just ensure that we're doing everything we possibly can to help their kid have the best experience at the camp, but also to help them guide their son as they leave camp as well. And for me, I like to talk about things that the kids can do to develop themselves holistically, not just in football, and these are things I think are most important based on my experiences, coaching for 25, 30 years in college football. Like, these are things that are going to help your son be his best. And I encourage you to read these books. And so we have a process there that I go through every camp, but there's just a lot more interactions with people at the camp, and that makes the camp different than other camps.
Do you have some advice for players and parents alike? Like you said, our camp is unique that you have individual access to college coaches specifically at this recruiting panel. So what's your advice for someone before they come to camp, whether it's questions they could prepare or things to think about before they're face to face with that college coach?
I think, a lot of times the kids that really impressed me have actually emailed me prior of camp, looking forward to meeting me. And that, that sticks in the coach's mind. So then when the coach gets there, like, this guy took the initiative, that shows good signs. That's a high level behavior that, this guy probably does a lot of things the right way. So I feel like that's one thing that I would encourage kids to do, is email all those coaches on the camp list and start building that relationship, because recruiting is about relationships, and you'll follow them on Twitter. I think that's also good. They can start to see what those programs are all about and what the coaches are all about. And certainly, if they're talking to their high school coaches, maybe there's some questions that they can bring to camp. And I think, just being a good student is being prepared. So the more they can prepare themselves to learn as much as they can, the better. Like, ask the hard questions. There's no question that we want every question. Sometimes parents might think it's a poor question, but there's no poor questions, and we want all the questions. A lot of times a parent might ask a question, another parent's glad they asked. They weren't maybe wanting to ask it. So I think just preparing questions. And I just interviewed or met with an eighth grader because I'm at a high school here and we're attracting eighth graders to our program. And he had a list of 6, 7 questions that were high level questions. He's one of the top eighth grade quarterbacks in the state. But, again, that shows his preparedness and his desire to be his best. And I think when kids can think about those things and reflect about Hey, what's important to me? What am I really looking for in college? So the more they're aware of the staff coming in, I think the more they can get out of it.
Love that. And at the beginning of this call, I spoke about the immediate feedback, the instant feedback that we provide at Exact Camp. It's one of the things that makes it special. So, can you go a little bit more in depth on what the evaluation looks like? And I'm talking about the email that you get after camp, what the coaches are looking to evaluate, and maybe what an in-person performance analysis might look like.
Yeah, so that's what's nice. It includes all those things. And you and I have talked before too, like some of the coaches work other camps and they don't have to do an evaluation. But that's what makes this camp special is coaches have to. It's part of the requirement. And that's best for the student. I mean, for any of us to grow, we have to get feedback. And we also have that's a growth mindset. We want kids to want feedback because if you don't get feedback, you can't grow anyway. So we really encourage them to accept the feedback for all of us athletes. We put a lot of work into it, so we want to be good and we want to be right. So sometimes hearing ways that we can improve is not fun, but I think at the same time, as we're maturing and growing our mindset, it's important to recognize like we can't get better unless we hear feedback. Because if you keep doing the same thing over and over, that's insanity. So we want to make sure that we're giving the feedback, and I guess the feedback's happening constantly through the drill work. Then there's times that we take where each coach will take their group of players and they'll give group feedback to the kids that are overseeing. But I encourage the coaches, like, 7-on-7, one-on-ones, like they're constantly giving feedback to different players, one at a time, obviously at that point. But then at the end of the camp, we're the guys know which guys are recruiting and we have documentation. So the coaches know, like, hey, these are my guys today. They're going to learn their names. They're going to take notes about those kids throughout camp. That at the end of camp, those coaches have to do an online evaluation of those kids and the skills they saw that were demonstrated, ways they could improve. And then, unfortunately, these kids have a profile on Exact's portal that they can have access to all their combine numbers and that feedback forever. And I think that's real valuable for the kids. But yeah, that's one thing that I know parents are looking for is feedback. So we really encourage the coaches to provide as much feedback as possible.
And, as a college coach yourself, can you talk about how this feedback loop can help prepare a high schooler for what they may encounter in a player meeting, in your college program?
Yeah, I think it's just good for kids to learn to accept the feedback because I think that's really hard for a lot of kids. They don't want feedback. It's only because they care so much. They want to be their best and they feel like if I get feedback, then I'm letting somebody down or I'm not meeting the mark. But I mean, the best players, the players playing the Super Bowl, like they get feedback from their coaches just the same. So just recognize that feedback is part of growth. And that's something in college football, like everything's videotaped. Every practice, every snap is going to be portrayed, to your team. And we all have to be accountable. That's one of the best things about sport is you learn accountability. And we want people to be able to take accountability before they point fingers somewhere different. But in college football, guys that miss or late or something, they're going to be highlighted on the screen in front of their team. That's, I know some parents don't like that, but that's reality. That's accountability. So if you don't, like at our place, if you're not lifting, like I send out percentages of who's in the weight room to all the parents. So I mean, that comes with it. Like we want everybody committed, and the way you get a culture that allows you to win is making sure everybody's accountable. We call that relentless accountability. But I think just getting feedback is definitely going to prepare them for college football because it's constant all the time at that level for sure.
So throughout this conversation, we've talked a lot about what differentiates Exact Sports camps, just the personalization of our events, how we provide feedback. What's some advice that you would give student athletes attending our event in terms of how they might wrap up their day, how they might depart from the coaches, what they may ask them?
Yeah, I think the kids do a good job of this because we give them opportunities to go get their phones after we wrap up. They bring their phones to the collective group. Each coach will, tell them their Twitter account because in football, X or Twitter, that platform is what everybody uses for recruitment. So all those coaches share that with them. The kids do a really good job of being appreciative, of thanking the coaches that come. Parents do the same. So I've been real impressed with, honestly, the kids and the parents because there's always a lot of appreciation shared. people follow each other. There's direct messaging afterwards. I think that's really powerful too for players to direct message those coaches and send their huddle links to the coaches they worked with so they can have more information. And a lot, I mean, I still hear from kids I had at camp a couple years ago because they direct message me. So it is forming relationships, and all these coaches want to help the best way they can as well. So, you're part of hiring a staff, and together we bring in really high quality coaches. And if they're not going to do a great job, like, we don't keep hiring them either. So like it's a selective group of coaches that we have on these staffs, and therefore I think they do a really good job investing in student athletes. But just for kids at the end of camp to, hey, shake hands, show appreciation, follow the coach on Twitter, follow up with a direct message. And parents kind of do the same thing, but I see that all the time. So I feel like kids should keep doing that.
And so when parents come to pick up their athletes, end of the day, what would you say is the number one thing that you hear from parents that makes our experience different?
I think just the investment in the holistic development, and we provide them a lot of tools that they can take with them, because obviously no one's going to become an All-American in one day's camp. But what we're trying to do is give them things that they can take with them to continue to apply in their own preparation training as they get ready for their own season. So I think the parents just see that we've given them a lot of tools, tools that they can use off the field, the mental performance elements, books, recommended books to read, to, specific skills drills that they can take with them to do as well. But hopefully we're feeding them motivation, that we're feeling their desire to want to do those things, because that's the thing that makes the difference is, everybody's mindset. The people that want it the most get the most. So I think as coaches, and even at the camp, we're trying to help them like nurture that desire for greatness. David Goggins at one point in his life, he had no desire. He was overweight, was not motivated, and he got sick and tired of being sick and tired. So then he went to the services, and from there he's like, I'm gonna be a Navy SEAL, to then go and setting the world record for pull-ups, to then be an ultra marathon runner, 150 miles in a day, to then being a 250-mile racer. I mean, we all can grow our mindset. And I think that's part of the camp experience too, is we want to help them understand the importance of the mental element of this game. 90% of the game is mental. So we spent a lot of time at this camp talking about those elements too. And that really is more important than football skills, because if you don't really want to be great, it doesn't matter what the field's doing for you. It takes a desire first. And we had a conversation yesterday about culture and what recruiters are looking for. They're first looking for people that would just want to be great, because how you do one thing is how you do it all. So anyway, I think they take with them all those things, and I think that's why the camp is so valuable.
And I guess kind of related to that question, we get a lot of first-time coaches. What would you say is the most common thing you hear from coaches, and why they love working our events?
The coaches really think it's organized, from everybody exact, from you hiring them to the communication. They just like the format, the practice plan. We have a really, I think, organized practice plan. Like I said, we start with the elevator pitch. We then divide them up into 3 groups, and we show them how to do the combine. That's not done elsewhere. And then we do the combine, and then we do a defensive tackle circuit drill, which is really powerful. All players need to learn how to tackle. And then we get into defensive individual, and we take an hour lunch. And then we come back and we do some offensive work, to one-on-ones, to 7-on-7. There's competitions. And I just feel like it's really smooth and organized. And, that's really why the coaches enjoy it. And, usually we have good kids there and parents. So it's a good environment. The flag and the video we provide as well to the camp is another feature. So the coaches always tell me it's the best camp they work for sure. I get that all the time.
Put that on a t-shirt, Coach.
Yeah, we should.
Well, Coach, thank you for joining us today to kind of talk more about our camp experience on the X Factor. That's all we've got for today. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's been fun to share.